Good evening, everyone. I know this has been a very exciting evening. It's been hard to get everybody settled down here, just saying. Well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody in this packed house here. And we have quite a few people on Zoom, too. So welcome to everybody. I'm Kate Markert. I'm Executive Director here at Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens, and my pronouns are she and her. And as we begin, I always like to gratefully acknowledge the Nacotch tank, also documented as the Anacostan, the Piscataway, and the Pamunkey. And those are the native peoples on whose ancestral lands Hillwood now stands, and of course, as well as the diverse and vibrant native communities who make their homes near us still today. We are so pleased to have our audiences joining us, both from here at the theater as well as from home. And I know everybody in the theater knows what I'm going to say now. Silence all those things that bark and ring and, do all that stuff. Thank you so much. And for those of you joining by Zoom, please make yourselves comfortable. Your cameras and microphones are off. We can't see you. We don't know what you're doing there. Okay. But you can still submit your questions via the Q&A function whenever they cross your mind. And we will get to them, as many of them as we can, both from in the audience and on Zoom at the end of the program. Our current exhibition is Determined Women, Collectors, Artists, and Designers at Hillwood. And I hope many of you have had the chance to see it. It is a wonderful, wonderful show that explores the stories of innovative and intrepid women who inspired Post by making a place for themselves and overcoming obstacles through their determination to succeed. It is indeed an inspiration to us all. March is also Orchid Month. I hope you've had a chance to go over to the greenhouse or maybe see all the orchids in the breakfast room. All month long, we will celebrate Marjorie Merriweather Post's favorite flower with workshops, tours, and colorful displays throughout the estate. Now, it's always bittersweet to reach the end of a lecture series. It has been just wonderful to be able to gather together. We now know how precious that is. Each week to hear from great experts, but it won't be long before we can gather again. On March 29th, Hillwood's Chief Curator Wilfred Zeisler, our Associate Curator Megan Martinelli, and the Head of Archives and Special Collections Jason Speck, they together will give a lecture on aspects of the Determined Women exhibition. And so you can go see the Determined Women exhibition before you then come to hear the lecture. It'll be a wonderful evening, I assure you. You can, I'm sure many of you know this, but you can learn much more about all of the programming that we have to offer, because we really do have tremendously rich program offerings at hillwoodmuseum.org. And for those of you who are not yet members, I invite you to join today and really take advantage of your benefits, not just this season, but all year long. Tonight, we are excited to end our series on an especially high note with Alex Papachristidis, author of The Elegant Life, Rooms That Welcome and Inspire. After the lecture, you're welcome to join him just outside the door here for a book signing. And of course, his book can be purchased upstairs in the museum shop. The work of interior designer Alex Papachristidis has been described as thoughtful, personal, sophisticated, and eclectic. He fuses modern and traditional elements, causing editors, designers, and clients alike to use the word fresh to define his elegant approach, and also to define him. Born and raised in New York City, Alex Papachristidis traveled widely in his youth, helping to cultivate his eye for interior design. He established his own firm in 1987, His work has been featured in Architectural Digest, Elle Decor, House Beautiful, House and Garden, Southern Accents, In Style, and of course in the New York Times. He has also been featured in a number of published works, and in 2012, Rizzoli published his book, The Age of Elegance, Interiors by Alex Papachristidis, which met with praise from both readers and critics. Papachristidis was named to the 2017 AD 100 list, Elle Decor's A list of 25 interior designers, and for several years has been on the New York Space's top 50 designers list. Now please join me in welcoming Alex Papachristidis.
Thank you, Kate, for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Hillwood, for having me. This is really, truly one of my favorite house museums in the world. It's a very special place. And honestly, thank you all for coming. It's so nice to have you here and to be in Washington, one of our favorite cities. My partner and I, we love to come to Washington. We love to stay at the Hay Adams, and we love to have that oatmeal souffle. If you've never had it and you live in Washington, shame on you. It's the most delicious thing. It's like my Washington fantasy. Anyway, so this is my new book, The Elegant Life with Rizzoli. It's my second book in 10 years. My first book was The Age of Elegance, and doing these books is one of the great joys of my life. As a young boy, I read books on legendary decorators, and I always wanted to have my own book. So it was a very sort of sentimental, special thing for me to have my first book. And it's a great honor that Rizzoli is publishing my book and my second book, and it's great fun. I don't know if I have another one in me. My partner says, get to it. I think you're going to wait 5 years and you'll have your third book. I don't know about that because it's like giving birth, but it's great fun. So I'm showing you probably like 7 or 8 different projects from the book. Hopefully you'll come and I'll sign a book for you afterwards. And the thing that I love about the new book is that it shows the evolution of my career and how I've learned to do modern interiors. I'm a great classicist and really a very traditional person in every respect, but times have changed and I've educated myself and taught myself about modern interiors, and also everyone has different taste and the world has become much more contemporary. Now, that said, I still encourage people to decorate properly and to buy antiques and to buy good quality things as well as modern and contemporary pieces. So here, this is a young family in the East Village, an apartment that I did downtown. And here the client handed me a photograph of a forest and said, I'd like this to be my entrance hall. Make it happen. So I said, well, that sounds divine. I loved the idea. And I went to de Gournay and I handed them the photograph, and we created this wonderful forest. And the thing that I love about it is it brings dimension into a small space. And because it was a young family with strollers and 3 boys that are literally like wild men running through the house, we put down a wonderful green tile floor to sort of imitate grass, but be very sort of easy to use and user-friendly, and it can be washed down. Again, it shows my love of vintage furniture, and here Rob John Gibbons chairs from the dining room that we pull into the entrance for her, because of course she insists that you take off your shoes when you come to the house, so people of a certain age need a place to sit down. And a wonderful Swedish console. I love bringing nature into the house, so there's always plants and flowers on all my projects. The living room, which has a wonderful carpet that she insisted that I buy from ABC, and I love the concept of the pink and sort of it's kind of like a greeny turquoise color. And then I upholstered the sofa in silk velvet with a wonderful kind of bohemian pillow, modern artwork, Moroccan tables, Crispitz Miller lamps, some wonderful chairs that I found that are vintage, that are Brazilian. The Brazilians have this interesting furniture now that's contemporary and sort of very special, and I love the sculpturalness of furniture. I always put slipper chairs in rooms because they're so handy. If you're having a party, 2 ladies can sit on them and sort of perch. She loves India, and she's always going to help refugees in India and going to Tibet. She loved the concept of that. And so I found this wonderful Mano Canova wallpaper that I put into her dining room. And the chairs are all upholstered, but with different backs. The pot with the wonderful lemon tree is by the great artist Vladimir, who actually did an exhibit here at Hillwood, and he's a ceramicist. But again, the client's quite contemporary, and she wanted something different. So we found this modern pot, and I sent it to Vladimir and said, can you do a lemon tree in it instead of something typical floral arrangement? The painting is Anish Kapoor, and the sculpture in the corner is a gift from her in-laws by Ugo Rondinoni, the artist. And I love the color mixing with the wallpaper. It's sort of wonderful. And I love the juxtaposition of the contemporary and traditional. The shades are made out of a horsehair-like fabric. And she didn't want fussy curtains all over the house, and she didn't want the children. She's very concerned that the children could pull on the cords and pull on the curtains. So we did these wonderful ethereal shades. The table was set by myself, Everyday Elegance, and she loves to entertain. And just sort of interesting bringing things from the house onto your dining room table. Mixing antiques, vintage things. She had the linens that she had bought on a trip to Capri. And I always encourage clients to collect. And, when you travel, find something beautiful. Find some beautiful linens. Find some beautiful dishes. Don't go crazy because I might not like it. But, find something beautiful. And you can always text me a picture before you buy it, I like to say. So here's their breakfast room and their kitchen. The walls are grass paper. So this is my guilty pleasure. So I hate people who reuse things. I think it's unoriginal. We never repeat a print on a project. And once I've used it, I'll only allow clients to use a print that I've already used if it's from our own house. But I won't let you use another client's print. It's dead to me. So I have to start from scratch. But here, this table is a Saarinen table. This is what I use all the time, just because it is the most practical, durable, sensible table. It has no apron on it. It's so easy to sit at. The kids can do an art project. It's like the perfect place, the perfect table to use. So we use them in kitchens all the time. But I love using it in a different way. And here I've done it with a tole and porcelain chandelier, grass paper on the walls, mantle-covered chairs. The bar stools you can see into the kitchen are Thonet, and she loves to cook. And she has a wonderful restaurant in New York now called Spring Cafe, as well as one in Aspen. She's a very healthy naturalist cook, and she loves all that. And so her herbs are hanging from a skylight in the kitchen. So this was a very, very special project for me. This is Athens, Greece. And the clients called me over to Athens and said, would you come and see our house? And I said, sure, why not? So I flew over to Athens and I saw this apartment, a building that was built in the 70s that was just depressing. But they had these amazing Greek architects who were design build named Melkis. And they said, these are the people we want you to use. And they just seemed so professional and so, they really were unbelievable. I've been doing this for 35 years, and truthfully, I've never seen craftsmanship like this. So the inspiration for the project was the Villa Kirlos, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's an incredible house in the south of France. Google it if you don't know anything about it. It's this unbelievable neoclassical house in the south of France that has incredible Rob John Gibbons furniture, incredible tile work, mosaic, unbelievable bronzes. And the railing is something that inspired me from the Villa Kirlos. I sent them a picture of it. Within 10 days in my office in New York from Greece, I received a wax mold of exactly the detail of what I had asked for. I'm like, can you guys move to New York, please? Anyway, so the stone floor I had the stone and we created the floor. They had already hired a decorator and fired him before they started. It was their original decorator who they found too prickly and difficult. So they hired me. And I brought in Delphine Nevy from Paris, this incredible decorative painter who did the walls. And they're sort of gold leaf on black paper with terracotta, and they're very much inspired from Pompeii. There's a whole sort of neoclassical Greco-Roman sort of feeling that goes throughout the house. The marble pilasters we designed together with the architect, the marble baseboard, the marble crown molding. The chandelier was purchased in Paris, and the consoles were purchased in New York from the Chinese porcelain company. So the reason this project was so special to me was because when I was 8 years old, and here I am at 9, with my mother and my 3 sisters, my mother said we're going to Greece for the summer. Well, she liked it so much, we lived there for 2 years. I went to Greek school the first day I walked in. They brought a child to the front who was talking in the back room, and they beat him with a ruler. I, being a spoiled New York child, almost had a heart attack. I went home to my mother crying hysterically. She said, "You'll never step foot in that school again." So I went to the American Community School, but we lived in Kolonaki Square. Well, this apartment that I was called to do 42 years later? No, 52 years later. 51 years later, whatever, in the 50s, was 4 blocks from where I lived as a child in Athens. So it just sort of, life is so interesting, sort of the kismet of what's meant to be and what happens to you. And it was just this incredible experience. My mother and my sisters were and are the great inspiration of my life. My mother took me all over the world, exposed me to everything and showed me everything. And my sisters are my friends, my muses. My family is so important to me and has taught me so much and shared so much with me. So I wanted to share this with you. So here we are back in Athens. So one of the client's requests was, could you please try and buy things in Europe because of the import tax? He wanted to use European resources. I said, absolutely, why not? So it had always been my dream to work with Decor in Paris, the great French upholsterer who made furniture for Henri Samuel, for the Agnellis, for all the great European families and decorators. So I made these 2 sofas in Paris, and those sofas are entirely over-embroidered to my designs. So that's not trim on the sofas, that's embroidery on silk velvet. And I mean, it was literally like going to have a couture ball gown fitted. We would go to Paris, me and my assistant, every 6 months and check on everything. And we just had the most incredible time. So they made all of the upholstery for us. And it was just the best experience. The coffee table is Ingrid Donnet, a French artist. And the tree is by Louis Kane, another Parisian artist. The box is Nancy Lorenz, and the chair is 18th century a la grecque. And interestingly enough, there's an 18th century painting in Hillwood a la grecque of a woman dressed sort of in a Grecian con. And so what that is it's the French interpreting the Greek style, which I love that it was a la grecque and it was going back to Athens, but a French chair. The console is from Carlton Hobbs, and the pair of mirrors are just these wonderful, huge sunburst mirrors, and they were really the start to the living room. The commode is for 18th century from Paris, porphyry urns, and a Vladimir flower. Another view of the living room. So I love to take concepts of wood, carpet, and stone and mix them into different medias. So this floor in the living room is Parquet de Versailles, but it's done in stone. So to me, that's sort of, it's about classicism, but used in a new way. And the sofa I found in a wonderful, wonderful book on Venice, and I sort of made it my own. The lamps are by Eve Kaplan, and you'll see I use plenty of her things. She's a contemporary artisan represented by Gerald Bland in New York. And if you don't know her, you should Google her. I think that she's really going to be an enormous, a very famous woman one day. She's extremely talented. And she restored 18th century furniture and then became a ceramicist. Jerry Bland in New York, who's one of the chicest dealers, represents her, and her things are incredible. So she custom makes things for me all the time, and she made these lamps. Again, 18th century chairs in the front from Carlton Hobbs with a teeny little Maillard Guéridon. The chair on the right is Hickley, and Hickley is an incredible he's passed away, but he was a sculptor and an artisan who made furniture out of steel. I first saw his things in Henri Samuel's apartment in Paris, in his collection, and I thought they were so unbelievable. Again, I love those modern sculptural things thrown in next to the 18th century. It keeps it all fresh. If you can see the little side table on your left, my partner, Scott, loves to run ahead of me in stores and at the antique market, and ran ahead and came running back to me and said, "Oh my God, Al, you have to come see this table." It was an 18th century games table that was actually going to be purchased by the Met, but because of what it was made of, They couldn't buy it because they couldn't import it into America. So it was still in the store in Paris, and the dealer gave it to us for an incredible price. It's very special. It's ivory, brass, and the ivory is painted green. It's incredible. So this is the library. So again, remember I said the building was kind of a situation. It was a 1970s apartment, and it had windows that went from literally wall to wall. So these long windows ruined the proportions of the room. And being a classicist, I just was like, absolutely not. That doesn't work. Well, the client was like, well, we can't rip the facade of the building off. I said, okay, we'll solve the problem. So we created these screens. We built the room out of oak and created these paneled screens and these opened sort of fretwork windows that created new windows in the room. So these walls move, and behind there you can open and clean the windows. But when you look at the room, it seems proportional, and there's space on either side, so that it doesn't feel like some horrible thing from the 70s. The sofa is Janssen. The coffee table is my favorite. Oh my God. It'll come to me in a minute. Hervé van der Straten, and he made it for us. The sofa's in a Claremont fabric, and the carpet's custom made for me by Beauvais, and I loved using those. I love to use sort of interesting colors. It's like a blue and a tobacco, the whole room. And I love oak, and it's a wonderful dry oak room. The sofa pillows are in antique textiles, and then, of course, there's my signature thing, which is silk velvet laminac, leopard and tiger, that I always use. And it was Georges Geoffroy, the great decorator, who was one of his signatures, and I've copied that from him. It's only 24 inches wide, and it's still made on hand looms, and it's one of the few sort of great fabrics that's still made as it was in the 18th century. So here's the dining room. Again, I commissioned Delphine Nevy to do a Pompeian garden, but the client had written a book on Greek sculptures. So as a surprise to her, I put in each corner of the room, I had Delphine paint the sculptures. So she walked into this dining room that was an enchanted forest, and there were her sculptures, and she just started crying. She was so, I love making a home personal, that it's a conversation piece, and it's reflective of the people who live there, and they feel ownership. And it's not about me, it's about me jumping into their shoes and creating an interior that they couldn't do on their own, but that they'll love and enjoy for the rest of their lives. The lamps are Grand Tour souvenirs, sort of Victorian pieces that are Greek vases that I mounted. And then in a wonderful, wonderful movie, The Prince and the Showgirl, I don't know if you've seen it, it's divine. I saw this incredible lampshade. So I stopped the movie, took a picture of it, and now I make this lampshade all the time, covered in sort of a crosshatch of passementerie. The tables I set and collected all the dishes in antique silver. The chairs are Regency from New York, another Hervé van der Straten cabinet, and there Eve Kaplan made this ceramic chandelier for us. Well, that was, thank God I wasn't there. So the way we did the installation was, my project managers flew ahead of me and got everything into the apartment before I got there. My assistant said to me, if I had been there to see that chandelier, uncrated, going up on a pulley, 4 floors in the air, made out of ceramic, I would have absolutely had a heart attack. She said, thank God you weren't here to see this. The screens, I didn't do curtains, and I did these wonderful bronze metal screens in the room because the views are so beautiful from everywhere. So here we are. This is the terrace. So right there you see the Acropolis. Every room looks at the Acropolis. It's set on the top of the highest point below the monastery on Kolonaki Square, which was, again, so special, and that's why I said to the client, we'll make this work. I mean, the view is so unbelievable. So you see this beam? Well, that's a steel beam that was a support beam, and it had nothing on it. Well, it's like that scene from Mommy Dearest where I looked at that beam, and I said, tear down that you-know-what of a beam, and let's not have it. They said, well, we can't do that, Alex. The building will fall down. So I said, okay. So I got on the plane, and I thought, and I scratched my head, and I said, I've got it. So we took a neoclassical plaster frieze and wrapped it around the beam, and the entire that goes all the way around. So it looks deliberate, and it creates this effect. We built the railing, and it creates this effect of an open window looking at the Acropolis. Oh my God, that was so stressful for me coming up with that. Oh, I was so happy when I figured that one out. A mixture of wonderful furniture, Hedingham, McKinnon and Harris, John Dickinson, some wonderful Chinese garden seats. All the fabrics are Michael Smith. I love the idea of sort of using those Grecian colors of coral and white. So now here we are in another very special project. This is a house in the Hamptons. And the client is very dear to me. She's my sister, and she's actually the person who first believed in me and told me, I'll hire you. So we're extremely, extremely close. And she said to me, Al, I want this new beach house to be entirely different. Here's what I want. Silver, gold, and white, stucco, limestone. I was like, ooh, okay. All right, we'll make it happen. So we did it. So the whole house is silver, gold, and white, stucco, and limestone. Each room has the same Jerusalem limestone in a different pattern. Here you see it in a chevron. The sculpture is from Paul Kasman, and I was shopping down there one day, and I called my sister and said, there's something of this that my mother had just passed away. And I said, there's something of this that I don't know why, but it reminds me of Mom somehow. Sister saw it and said, I love it, let's buy it. So it's this wonderful life-size sculpture that I don't know, it feels just so wonderful in the space, and it's just so interesting. The sconces are by Charles of Paris, the console John Dickinson, the lamp Giacometti, and then there's a little 18th century stool underneath that I found in Palm Beach. So this is the living room. Again, so living in your own house, you always learn things. And, we're all so much about not getting sun, and we don't want to get skin cancer, and we have to have porches that are covered. Well, the problem with a covered porch that we forget is it darkens your living room. So you have a covered porch off your living room or off your dining room, but then your living room's dark, and you don't get that kind of light, at least from one side. So when I was building this house with the architect Kitty McCoy, who's a local Southampton architect, and I adore her, she's extremely talented. So we were building the house, and I said to her, it's a two-story house, but it's an upside-down house. You just have an entrance hall in the downstairs, and the main house is upstairs because it had to be built on pilings because they lost the first house to a nor'easter, and FEMA has all these rules about how these houses have to be built. The whole bottom of the house has to be breakaway. So if there is a nor'easter, it comes through the house, and the house is standing on pilings, so the whole house is upstairs. Anyway, what we came up with was, since it really this was the top of the house, I said, let's have a skylight. But then, skylights feel very buildery and suburban, so out of the question to have a normal skylight. We have to have a special skylight. So I said, I want to build the skylight, and the other thing that I hate is when you see the birds walking on the skylight and pooing, and then you look up there and you're waiting for somebody to clean the poo off the skylight, and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do with that? I can't look at that. That's just upsetting. So anyway, I said, I don't want to see the glass of the skylight. So we dropped the ceiling. So the skylight is white glass. Then there's about 2 feet of space. It's a light box. And then the top is clear glass, so the light comes through. So the living room is always lit, even though there's a covered porch. And at night, you turn on a light switch, and the whole ceiling glows. It's like a light box. Anyway, the client loves jewelry, so we hung a pair of Hervé van der Straten chandeliers, like earrings. The room was inspired from Brooke Astor's Library by Albert Hadley, and it's white lacquer strapped in brass. But because it was the beach, I thought I'd be a little more casual. So I made sure that the brass was not polished, but brushed. The fireplace is steel. Again, the limestone floor in the living room is Parquet de Versailles. The games table chairs are 18th century, and we're big card players in our family. We play a Greek card game called Bariba. My niece, Samantha, my partner Scott, my sister and I play, and it gets vicious. It gets very serious at that card table. The apple on the table is Lalande, an 18th century candelabra, a little Lalande chair sitting by the fireplace, and the sofas I found in a wonderful book from the 1970s. And I love the idea of these brass cantilevered sofas. So I had my upholsterer make them, but I sort of made them, again, a little bit Turkish with the pillows on the side that are actually arms. Over the fireplace is an Anish Kapoor. And the curtains are in a wonderful sort of ethereal golden white fabric that's very sheer. So this is the TV room. So I have this new obsession, which is a U-shaped sofa. We did it first in our house in the Hamptons. And I'm thinking to myself, where did I get this idea? Well, you know where it comes from? I Dream of Jeannie. It was her bottle that she had that sofa in, and I thought, is that the most... I was like Mike TV. I loved to watch television as a child, and I just went crazy over that sofa. I'm like, I know where I got that. Jeannie had that sofa. So I love to do these sofas. They're super cozy. 2 people can lie on the corners and put up their feet. You can have like 12 people in there. It just makes the room sort of divine to fill it with a big piece of upholstery. The coffee table's called Springer, and the photograph in the back of the room sort of acts like a window into the 18th century. The Japanese lacquer trunk on one side and the mahogany gueridon. And that is our wonderful little Yorkie who used to jump in every photograph, Teddy. He passed away, he was 18. We have a new boy now by the name of Cooper, a Norwich Terrier, who is just a brute of a darling animal. But Teddy, if a camera came out, he ran in front of that camera and posed. He was a ham and a half. The sconces, Michael Taylor, they're incredible. They're 4.5 feet tall, 18th century French ormolu candelabras. And my sister always loved things with sort of unusual scale. And again, they were like sculptures. Michael Taylor had used them in an incredible house in San Francisco for Dolores Knowles. And then again, you see, right in the foreground is a wonderful little 19th century rope chair, but I upholstered it in white leather. So I love that concept of taking something old and making it new. Here we are in the dining room. So the dining room is cerusade oak, and I commissioned Eve Kaplan to make a table base. So that table base is supported in steel, but made out of ceramic boulders. And the top is steel and brass. The chairs are Jean-Michel Franck, gilded in a tooled leather. And the flowers, again, were commissioned. Her favorite flowers, peonies by Vladimir. And it's the first time he ever did grisaille stems. And I asked him to put them in a pair of pots that my dear friend Christopher Spitzmiller custom made for us. The chandelier we bought on a trip to LA is Swedish, and it was from an opera house, from Therian, a wonderful dealer. And the walls, instead of doing artwork, I had the panels created by the artist Nancy Lorenz. She created underwater seascapes in gold, silver leaf, and mother of pearl. The 4 torchères in the room were from the balcony sale, and I chalky whited them with 4 candelabras by Tony Victoria. So at night when you sit in the dining room, we keep the lights very low, and you light the candles, and it sort of feels like the Hall of Mirrors with the reflectiveness of the gold and silver and the light. It's very special, and almost has a modern 18th century feel to it. So growing up in New York, I used to go to Studio 54 and Xenon, and I was like a disco kid. All my girlfriends had all these cool boyfriends, and we'd go to people's houses, and we'd go to parties, and we'd have fun. And we went to this friend's house, and he had a steel kitchen by Jay Spector. And I thought, wow, that's kind of fabulous. Well, I stored it in the back of my head, and when my sister said, silver, gold, and white, I said, steel kitchen. We're bringing that one up. But we're doing it in our own way with brass trim. So it's a brushed steel kitchen with brass trim. Again, limestone floor in a different pattern. The chandeliers are from the 70s, the 2 glass ones. And this one here is by Tommaso Barbi, an Italian artisan who created the leaf chandelier. His things are wonderful. It was crazy because you used to buy his things in Palm Beach on Dixie Highway for like $200, and now they're like, $18,000. I mean, it's crazy. The table is made for me by Sohn, which is a wonderful, wonderful English dealer who deals in antiques and makes contemporary furniture and fabric. If you're not familiar with them, Google them. The sofa is in a silver metallic fabric from Cowton & Tout. So the master bedroom. 3 incredible views. So on one side is the ocean, on one side is the bay, and in front of the bed are 2 windows with a view of a nature preserve. Well, again, I wanted to create something magical. They have this flat screen TV that comes down from the ceiling, and they love to have breakfast in bed and watch TV. So I said, well, the room needs to be magical. So I did this wonderful Jean-Michel Franck paneling, which is reversed paneling. And then I called on Rob Wynn, the artist, to create a glass bubble room. So you almost feel like are you in the air, are you underwater? All of these sort of wonderful, ethereal, surrealistic feelings. And it's all mirrored bubbles. The chandelier and sconces are Venetian. The side tables are Tony Victoria, who was a great furniture maker. His father was one of the great antique dealers in New York. And now they've closed the antique business, but he still makes furniture. He made things for the Duke and Duchess of Windsor and Babe Paley and Siri Mon. Incredible things. So he made these bedside tables. And on a trip to Paris at the Ritz, I touched the bedside table, and the drawer popped open, and the phones were inside. I thought, well, that's divine. So that's what you have here. You don't have to look at a bleeping 9-line phone. It's in those drawers, which is divine. You touch them. So Tom Ford, in his wonderful store in New York, used to have a desk by Lalonde, but then the prices of the Lalonde furniture went through the roof, and they became crazy. And so he took the desk home. Well, he replaced it with this incredible gilded desk in the back of the room by a Brooklyn artist by the name of Chris Schenk. It's made of styrofoam and metal and gilded. And I thought, wow, that's just like a crazy piece of sculpture. So I asked them who did it. I went to his studio, and I bought one and put it in their bedroom and mixed it with an 18th century chair. Again, I love that mix. Pair of club chairs in the room by Siri Mon. So, a young family house in the Hamptons. They had this charming little cottage that they lived in for years. I've done 7 homes. I'm on my 7th home for these clients, and they're the cutest, most adorable people. I met them when they were 24 years old. He thought I was just so grand and fancy, and I thought he was just such a little, obnoxious kid. But today we are best friends who love each other beyond, tease each other all the time, and adore each other. We have the best time, and we're on our 7th house. I'm now doing a wonderful apartment for them on Park Avenue. I just finished their house in Florida, and this is their house in the Hamptons that I had done before. So here they wanted something that was very modern and easy to use. They have 3 kids. They have each have 6 siblings. They have so many cousins and nieces and nephews. So we did this modern barn with Mark Zeft, and the floors are concrete, which I thought, again, was so interesting. And she's a clean freak, which I love. So she likes to have those floors polished every 15 minutes. We put a wonderful brass fireplace between the entrance hall and the dining room. And the ceiling is wood to sort of soften the sound and make the room feel cozy because of the concrete floor. Here's the dining room with a pair of Knoll tables, and we mixed in Knoll chairs and Jonathan Adler, a contemporary painting, and a pair of chandeliers from Remains by Tony Duquette. The living room that opens onto a porch. So the doors sort of slide into the walls and pocket, so it becomes this indoor-outdoor room. And then there's another living room behind it, so they can entertain, 60 or 70 people for a big cocktail party or, a buffet dinner. And I loved the mix again. Here you have a wonderful chair in a Jane Churchill fabric in yellow and white that's 18th century from their original cottage, mixed with contemporary pieces that are glass and brass, a lacquer coffee table from KRB, a wonderful sofa from Monetti downtown, which sort of does Italian modern furniture, but I did it in a silk velvet so that it has this wonderful sort of plushness. Even though it's modern, it still feels luxurious and old. A contemporary painting, handmade rugs. The kitchen, we wanted to do something different, so we did a navy blue kitchen. And you see, there's that Saarinen table again. With the tulip chairs. They love them, and they're so practical. It's a great chair in a tight space, and they swivel so you don't ever have to move them. And again, they're like little sculptures. Their master bedroom, so we did a sort of big gray oak wall. Always my beds are unusual, and I like a fully upholstered bed. I don't like a dust ruffle. I like the box spring to be covered. Here it is on gilded feet in a Jane Churchill fabric, lacquer side tables. And it's about the mix of high and low. You know, the lamps are from Design Within Reach, and I love them that they look like Chinese lanterns. That white chair is from their original cottage, and the poofs we had made for them. The chandelier's Kelly Wursler. So again, a very unique project. So this was a townhouse in the West Village, and I don't think many people live like this in the West Village today. But anyway, he likes the White House and she likes Versailles. So we had to sort of come together and create a sort of formal interior that reflected both of them. So we commissioned Gracie to make Chinese wallpaper up the 5 flights of stairs. It's the largest commission that Gracie's ever done. And we did it on a silver antique tea paper that looks like it was cut and pasted together, the way it was made in the 18th century. But often the Chinese wallpaper has a Chinese fence in it, right? Well, I said, let's take the fence and turn it into the railing so that you have that sort of trompe-l'oeil effect of surrealism. And is the fence part of the paper or is it deliberate? So that's what we did. And then we custom made this wonderful old school trellis carpet, a gilded settee in the entrance hall downstairs, stenciled floors, and the side tables are by the great decorator Georges Gerfoy. Whenever I find his furniture, I always buy it. He made beautiful furniture. The obelisk and mirror is by Serge Roche, and the lanterns are from Ditchley Park. They're copies of a pair of lanterns that were in Ditchley Park, and Tony Victoria made them for me. All the other hanging chandeliers are from P.E. Guerin, and the pair of chalky white chairs are Sirimon. I always look to sort of the legendary decorators for their beautiful things and things that they made, and furniture that has a history. I love the idea that sort of furniture travels, and where did it come from, and what decorator made it. So they wanted a living room they could live in, but they wanted something incredibly special. So this room actually has a flat screen TV that drops from the ceiling, but the whole room is strapped and paneled so that you don't see the TV. And we wanted to have a wonderful chandelier, so we made that cove into the ceiling, and hanging in there is a balloon crystal chandelier from the 18th century. The mirror is 18th century, the mantle we bought in Paris, and the console's 18th century. The commode is incredible. It's one of a pair that belonged to a great duchess. And Mario told me, Mario Botta, who wrote the foreword to my first book, was a great friend of ours. And he told me the story of how he had bought the other one. And it's a French commode, but in the English taste. And it's turquoise. So I thought, isn't that interesting to mix this turquoise piece of furniture? I wanted it to be the only piece of furniture in turquoise. No turquoise upholstery, just a piece of furniture. And then I did a collection of turquoise ceramic in the room, sort of to make it all work, and turquoise porcelain. So it sort of offsets the green and blue. I love using interesting and sort of unusual colors together. The carpet we custom made with Beauvais, and the coffee table was from Mallett's. They used to make these divine furniture. They're an English dealer, and they made wonderful 18th century plaques and cloisonne and screens into coffee tables. So I found this coffee table at auction, but the problem was the colors felt very dated and wrong for the room. So I said, I can fix that. So I sent it to my decorative painter and had it sort of grisaille in pastel colors. So again, taking something old and making it fresh and work. The sofas, again, are slightly curved. They're a little bit like Marjorie's sofas that are in the theater here, actually, if you notice. Marjorie's have little pop-up tables, which I love. I got to try that sometime. The chairs are one of the best pieces of furniture. The gilded chairs on the two sides of the room are Cresson, and I bought them at auction. You know, in the old days, those chairs would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I found them in great 18th century books and all the documentation on them and where they've been. You know, I bought them at auction for not that much money. People just aren't interested. You know, now's the time to buy. French furniture, people are more interested, but I recommend buying brown furniture because it's great quality and beautiful. And as I tell all my young clients, it's green. You're not making something new. Antiques are green. So here's the living room, and again, I strapped the walls, and I had seen this divine picture that Mongiardino had done of stenciling, but I recreated it in my own way, and I brought her in and had her stencil all the strapping on the walls. And it just has this wonderful dimension. The painting over the sofa is a courtyard at Versailles to make the missus happy, and the coffee table is actually an 18th century stool. It was a bench that had been turned into a coffee table in the 20th century. The lamps are Christopher Spitzmiller, called the Ophelia lamps, named after my sister that he makes for me. And you see the turquoise porcelain. The bunnies belonged to Drew Hines, and Mongiardino had bought them for her. I bought them from the auction. 18th century gilded console, and the client loves to ride. She was a rider, so I found this beautiful painting on the left of a 19th century woman on horseback in the Bois de Boulogne. Their dining room. So we wanted something different. So I upholstered the walls, strapped them with pilasters, and then had hand-painted flowers, garlands, painted onto the mirror. And I loved the idea of sort of bringing the flowers. Here is a Vladimir flower in another Christopher Spitzmiller pot, and this one actually was one that went to the Hermitage exhibit. And they brought it back, and we put it in the client's dining room. The sconces and mirrors are by Yves Kaplan. The dining room table is a great example of Jansen's work. The top is Parquet de Versailles, and it was made in the 1950s. We're not sure for who, but it's an incredible extending dining room table that we restored. I bought it in Paris. It's almost identical to the one that belonged to the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. The chairs came from the de Balcony sale, and he had bought them from Charles de Bastigui's sale in Paris. Again, if you don't know who Charles de Bastiguis is, you must Google him. He is one of the great and most incredible stylish collectors. He had an incredible palazzo in Venice. He threw unbelievable parties. He had an unbelievable apartment in Paris, and he had an incredible house outside of Paris called the Chateau Grousset. He hired Emilio Terry, who was an incredible decorator, who also decorated for the Niarchoses and, scores and scores of sophisticated people, and he just had such unbelievable taste. So Google him, look at his chateau, look him up. This is their kitchen into their breakfast room, and these were their dining room chairs from their first apartment that I reupholstered in a Clarence House fabric, matching curtains. The chairs are from the Bastiguis sale, and they were by Emilio Terry, the outdoor chairs, and that's their garden, which is trellis. The chandelier is vintage from KRB in New York. The lanterns are custom from Urban Electric, and I had them hand-painted. Master bedroom. So he wanted a monster TV, and she hates to see a television set. So they were, what do we do? He's like, that TV's not big enough. She's like, I can't sleep with a TV in my room. I can't look at it. I hate it. So we designed this cabinet. Again, it's super thin. It's very large, and we did a combination of woodwork and fabric to sort of create something soft. So we designed it from an 18th century armoire. The sofa is 18th century from the Chinese Porcelain Company, and it's in a quilted chintz from Count & Tout. I love the idea of bringing quilting back. The chair is 18th century. The coffee table's by P.E. Guerin. The bed is upholstered. The lamp rock crystal chandelier. And the walls are lavender. The curtains are lavender satin. And we couldn't find the right lavender fabric, so we had it made for us in India because we needed 100 yards. And then we had it over-embroidered in cream. So all the walls are embroidered. The carpet I found had Beauvais make for me, and I found this wonderful Chinese chrysanthemum pattern that we created in lavender. So here we are in another very special apartment. This is an apartment that was in my first book, and now it's in my second book, redecorated. And when the clients wanted to redecorate it, I said, absolutely not. And they said, what are you, crazy? I'm like, no, I like it the way it is. Why do we have to sell all the beauty? He's like, I'm sick of it. It's been 10 years. I want all the antiques gone. I want to start from scratch. I had to hold on to the wall. I felt faint. His wife, who's my best friend, said, Al, it's the right thing. Please do it for me. I said, okay, we'll do it. I really almost fainted. I was so upset. But you know what? It was an amazing experience, and it was the right thing. So we redid the entrance hall. There was a fireplace here. We put a huge Christopher Wool painting. He's a huge art collector. And so he wanted to get rid of the fireplace and have a wall for a painting. The cabinets are Roberto Rita, and they're all made out of inlaid glass, contemporary. The chandeliers are alla Giacometti, and we made them out of plaster. A pair of Christopher Wool lithographs hang over the Roberto Rita cabinets. And the pigeons in the entrance hall, which in the beginning I was like, pigeons in the entrance hall, are by the artist Maurizio Catalan. But, you have to learn and get it. And, now I love those pigeons. I'm like, hi, fellas, when I go there. But in the beginning, I was a little freaked out. So here is me and my dear friend Laura Brumond, and it's her house. And the reason why I'm showing you a picture of her is because it's when I was 23 years old that I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I went into my family business, which was shipping, and I was like, I cannot even talk about an oil tanker. I mean, that is just like the most depressing thing in the world to me. I'm just not interested. No, and no. So I said, okay, I'm going to open a flower shop. I'm like, no, too much work. I don't want to have a flower shop. I'm like, okay, restaurant. No. Disgusting. You have to be there all the time. People steal from you. No. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm at a total loss. So I called my best friend at the time, Laura, and she came over and she said, Al, you have great taste. You should be a decorator. Well, it was like lightning struck me. And I ran off to Parsons, gave her a kiss, and now I'm on my fourth home for her. And we're still best friends, and here we are at a party at her father's house. She's wearing this dress that Arnold Scazzi had made for her. And it was made out of so much ribbon. I don't know if you remember who Arnold Scazzi was. He was a big designer in the 80s. Anyway, the dress was made out of tons and tons of ribbon, and it was super heavy. And somebody steps on her dress, and she turns around and elbows the guy in the stomach and says, Al, you stepped on my dress. Well, it wasn't me who stepped on her dress. It was somebody else who had stepped on her dress. I said, you just elbowed that man in the stomach, and it wasn't even me. But anyway, we're dear, dear, dear friends, and we've had so much fun and so many laughs together. This is their living room. So you can see the art: George Condo, Elizabeth Peyton, Christopher Wool, Stingle. The little chair in the front is Maria Pergay, Gabriella Crespi side tables, a Giacometti table, tons of Lalande objects. We had this very traditional marble mantle in this Park Avenue apartment that had been there forever, and it was made out of marble, and it had flowers and garlands on it. We said, that's got to go. And I did a wonderful sort of composite, like plaster Giacometti mantle in the room. Their library, which was in oak, and we wanted something different, so we stained it gray. The coffee table was so much fun. So there was this Architectural Digest show downtown where they had all these new dealers and contemporary artists. And I took her husband, Stafford, down there. And we were shopping down there, and I said, Stafford, this is the coffee table we have to buy. He said, really, Al? I said, Stafford, trust me. This coffee table's insane. This will be worth a lot of money one day. Well, we had to crane the coffee table into the apartment. I don't know if you've been to New York and seen those cranes in the street and what people taking out their windows on Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue. And I can't even tell you how. It was traumatizing watching that too. But anyway, they had to crane in all this art. So we craned in the coffee table. This coffee table, well, now he has a website, and it's gone up 20 times in value. Again, Maurizio Catalan. It is called Trophy Wife of Stephanie Seymour in wax over the mantle. A Lalande chair, a Ward Bennett upholstered chair in satin, a little Hickory side table, custom-made sofas, a Joe Bradley painting, and the desk over there in the corner is by Gabriella Crespi. It's an incredible story. So Gabriella Crespi was, I don't know if you're familiar with her, again, super divine taste, made furniture, Italian, super, super chic. Her things used to sell for, normal amounts of money. Well, that desk, we all fell in love with it. It was $350,000. I said, well, that's just stupid for a brass desk from the 70s. We're not paying that. Well, luckily enough, we found a friend who told us that they had been reissued in Italy. There were 9 of them made. They were a tenth the price. And they were actually not made out of brass, but made out of bronze. So we bought one of them and mixed it with a gold platinum chair. Over it is, there's a small Elizabeth Peyton on the right, and above it is a, John Curran of Mother and Child. The dining room, a pair of tables made for us in steel and brass, and I found a wonderful set of Swedish vintage chairs that I upholstered in a silver fabric. There weren't enough of them, so we made 14 of them. We only had 4. Rock crystal chandelier from Liz O'Brien, Anish Kapoor, a stone contemporary mantle, and a huge pair of Stingles in the dining room. Master bedroom, Hickory again, Maria Pergay. I custom made the side tables out of mirror, lucite, and gilded leather. The bed, as you can see, is upholstered in a white silk, and the walls are in a gray velvet. The wonderful white sculpture that almost feels like Giacometti is by Rebecca Warren. And I've learned so much from the client about art. You know, he's an incredible collector, and it's so interesting. Here we are in a young family's house in the Hamptons, and she is not afraid of color or pattern. She's got 3 boys. She entertains constantly. She has 60 for Christmas. She just loves to have color and fun with it. So we decorated big skirted table in the entrance hall, inspired from the Villa Malcontente, custom carpet up the stairs, modern art, a wonderful plaster chandelier of flowers. The dining room, striped walls with a fun ECAT curtain. The chairs are Liz O'Brien. The tables were custom made for us with the blue lacquer bases. And Gracie made for me the 3 panels in the room. So I had each of her sons choose their favorite animal, and we painted those animals into the walls. So again, it's teaching the children to love decorating and encouraging them and having them be a part of it, which was so much fun for them. L-shaped sofa, there's a TV on the other wall, Manuel Canova curtain, Swedish cabinet, an overlay dyed oriental rug, wonderful pair of vintage chairs. Kitchen, Serena and Lily bar stools. It's all about high and low. Just mix it up and have fun with it. Again, there's that Saarinen table. Look, sitting there. Living room, super colorful and fun. A wonderful pair of Janssen sofas that I found in a black and white book and made in a Brunswick fabric. An oriental rug re-dyed in turquoise. The sofa's strapped in trim. A lacquer coffee table. A wonderful collection of mirrors over the sofa that are made from found baking parts that an artist does. I just love them. Fortuny sells them. And a wicker chair by Gio Ponti in the corner over there. So this room was something that really was probably the most acclaimed thing that I've ever done in my life. And it just happened by this crazy happenstance because normally I'm such a color person and I love color. But the 2 projects that I was working on were silver, gold, and white, and gray and white. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be me. I'm going to be what my clients are asking for. So I did this room for Kips Bay in 2016 in silver, gold, and white. And I had Eve Kaplan make the table from Jerry, 18th century chairs from Dalva Brothers. There's always somebody in my mind for these rooms, and it was Mona von Bismarck. These consoles were hers from her Paris apartment, and I used these incredible 18th century consoles. The walls were inspired from a wonderful paper that was an antique from Gracie that Elsa de Wolf had done for Condé Nast in his apartment at the Waldorf Towers. But I blew up the scale and grisailled the entire thing. The bench is Lalande, the floors are painted. A wonderful divine sofa that I created, making it sort of luxurious and super cozy. The carpet is Turkish tent panels, and the curtains are sort of inspired from a Balenciaga ball gown. Mona von Bismarck wore Balenciaga, and so I loved the idea that we were channeling Mona. There are those chandeliers that are 18th century, but Eve Kaplan draped them in contemporary beads. A wonderful Frances Elkins lamp, the great decorator, the sister of David Adler, the architect. A Lalande candlestick, a wonderful Greek bust from Paris, from Gallery Chastal in Paris. A pair of coffee tables made for me by Tony Victoria with mother of pearl and gold inlaid tops. My signature, another one of my signature things is that Christopher Spitzmiller gourd that I use as a huge candy jar. And all the decorators were in my room eating candy all the time. So, my love of entertaining. This is our apartment in New York, and it shows, a buffet dinner that we were doing. And my love of entertaining led me to my second business, which is Everyday Elegance, an online tabletop business where I encourage clients to be daring, to have fun with it. We are making all of our own things now. We started by selling other people's things, but we realized it's not as interesting. People want custom-made things. They want unique pieces. So over the years, people have given me these incredible gifts, and I found these wonderful finds, and now I've copied them and made them my own. But here's our table setting, mixed with contemporary dishes from Marahata and 18th century porcelain. Wonderful pair of vases that I took with me on the airplane from the Paris flea market, which are navy blue and turquoise, which I think is such an interesting combination. And I love to support local florists, so Vladimir did the flowers. So here is my wonderful business partner and I, Lisa McCarthy, setting a table in a client's house. And you see the way we've incorporated antique objects and contemporary pieces. The table actually turns in the room and expands and can seat 18. So on a regular basis, it's small. And those are 18th century chairs that, again, I copied and made more of. There's a wonderful pair of beaded chandeliers in the rooms, and the walls are lacquered with yellow satin curtains. So learning from others is such an important part of my life. And that's really, my friends, history, other decorators, and reading books about how other people live. You learn so much from others. Keep your mind open. Constantly expose yourself. I read this incredible sort of book on Pauline de Rothschild and how she lived. And she was a great American style icon. If you're not familiar with Pauline, sadly, there isn't really a great book on her interiors, but you can Google her. She had incredible taste. She was super, super stylish. Well, I am an avid dish collector. Dishes, flatware, glasses, linens. I have literally taken every coat closet in our Hamptons house and turned it into a dish and linen closet. I have created basement rooms. I've created huge carts for dishes. I have 9 sets of service for 70. I am a lunatic. I could be related to Marjorie. So I didn't know what to do and how to categorize this, and how do you find it and you forget what you have. So it was Pauline de Rothschild who had these books made. There was a linen book, there was a flatware book, there was a glasses book, and there was a dishes book. And so she would bring out these books, take out the pictures, analyze it, decide what she'd do, and she would write down who came so that she never repeated it. So that's what I have. I have all these books. And I show them to clients and teach them how to do it themselves. So you have a catalog of all the things you have. So this is an example. So here I am setting the table in our smoking porch. So we have this little smoking porch that normally has a games table. You know how I love a games table. But I have all these skirted tables. And I love to take dinner into other rooms. I always encourage clients, move around the house. When you have guests, sit in a different room. It's so interesting. It's so much fun. It keeps the conversation going. You notice things in a new way. It's just divine. So sometimes we set the table on this porch out here, and it's an indoor-outdoor room. In the winter, it has glass. It has a heated floor. And in the summer, it has screens. And I actually use it as my little greenhouse in the winter, where I bring in all my plants that I keep outside, and they sort of grow and overcome the space. But it's kind of divine. Here I am setting the table, and I love leopard. So I had these wonderful satin leopard tablecloths made in our dining room. To me, leopard's a neutral. So when we moved into our house in the Hamptons, I hired a landscape architect. And he said, these crabapple trees, they're just, you know what, they're short-lived. We're getting rid of them. I said, oh, no, we're not. I am not killing a tree. I said, we're moving all those trees into one area. So we have this magical little area where for literally 10 days, you have these blossoming trees. And I thought, how magical to make it like a tent and set up tables. So these are all my tables and tablecloths and all my objects that I keep in storage in the house. And I set these tables in the garden. And it's so divine to sit under these trees and to be in nature, but man-manipulated nature. That's what I like. Anyway, it's so wonderful to be here. And remember, decorating should be the most fun thing that you do. It's a great luxury. Have fun doing it and always enjoy it. Thank you for having me. So nice to be here.
Thank you so much to Alex Papachristidis for
And I think we're going to do some
amazing
questions,
presentation.
and I think we're going to do Q&A.
That's right. If you all can hear me, I am speaking for those of us on Zoom tonight. For those of you in the theater, if you look over there, my colleague Megan has a microphone. The way that we'll do the Q&A tonight is anyone who's in the audience, please raise your hand, and my colleague Megan will bring the microphone over for you to speak your question so everyone on Zoom can hear you. And then after you're done saying your question, give the mic back to Megan, and she will bring it to the next person. So why don't we actually start with a question from Zoom. Someone would like to know if you could talk about the re-dyeing of the Oriental rugs.
Well, actually, so what they do is they take antique carpets and, again, it's one of those things that looks dated. The colors tend to be sort of reds and these sort of, not so current color palettes. And they take them and they run them through all of these bright colors and give them a whole new life. And they dye them and make them look new. I love that we're using something old and not throwing it away and making something fresh that feels modern out of it. I love the concept. Right here, the young lady. Thanks, Megan.
So, you find a lot of things in flea markets, and you have great flea market technique. What is that about? How do you walk into any flea market and always find that thing? What is it?
Well,
and
first
then
of
you
all,
learn?
you're sitting 2 seats away from a gentleman who's like a truffle hound for the right piece of furniture. He goes after these things. He runs ahead and calls me. But he's been well trained. He's been shopping with me for 20 years, and he knows. It's interesting. I think it's all related to what you've seen and what you know. One of my favorite stories is that Scott ran ahead of me in the flea market and calls me over and brings me to this table from a dealer that I know. Well, I never like to react too strongly because I like to keep the price down. So I'm like, oh, that's nice. So I said to the dealer, how much is it? He said, oh, yeah, Alex, for you, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. I said, can we do a little better? He's like, okay, sure. I said, I really, really like it. So Scott says to me, great, you're buying it. Who's it for? I said, you're looking at him. It went right into our library, and it was the Janssen table that was used, that Janssen made for the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. So that table I had already seen in the Windsor house. So Bettina, because of my knowledge of history and my awareness of things, I can see something and know what it is. Whereas not everybody studies things and is as interested. I can tell the form and the shape. Again, I always use these Persian animals in my interiors they're steel and inlaid with gold and silver. They're incredible. I first saw them in Christian Dior's house. One day I walked into a junk store in some place in Connecticut, and there was one of these Persian animals mounted as a lamp for $300. They used to be $25,000 each at H.M. Luther, but nobody knew what it was. So, that's why I always say, go to the best stores, look at the most expensive things, because one day you'll be in a junk shop and you'll spot something of quality. It's not about what you can afford. It's about training your eye. And a place like Hillwood shows you incredible things and trains you to see, that's quality. So that when you see something quality at an auction or somewhere or in a flea market or a store, you buy it because it's great value. Anybody else?
We have one more question from Zoom. Someone would like to know, how does your client keep her boys away from the Vladimir flowers?
Well, you know what? I was trained as a child to learn to live with beautiful things and be careful. And I think the clients who live with beautiful things have trained their children to understand really the quality and to appreciate beauty. And again, I always sort of talk to the children, encourage them. As we said, we put the boys' favorite animals into the Gracie wallpaper panels so they feel very connected to their house. Don't make these things foreign and off limits. Make them precious and important. And I think the children will appreciate them, care about them, and hopefully one day decorate and want to keep them and have the great memories. Right here, the gentleman. Thanks, Megan.
I think this will be our last question for tonight.
I'll keep it short. Alex, I've known you a long time, and I remember one day you said I guess we were looking in your apartment and we were in your dressing area, and you said to me, "You know how I select my wardrobe, what I'm going to wear that day?" And I said, "No, I don't." You said, "I start with a watch." So, by analogy, in your profession, outside of what clients are suggesting or asking you to put into the space, how do you start it? What is your genesis?
You know, crazily, George, I'm such a fabric person. And I take my clients and I encourage them. I like my clients to feel ownership, so I actually still take my clients to the D&D building. I mean, there's no decorators and their clients there. I mean, Mario Botta used to be there, but there's very few decorators who go to the D&D with their client. I like people to start with the fabrics, and I think the fabrics give me a direction of who they are and how they want to live. And then, you know, I was on a panel the other day with Bonnie Williams and Stephen Sills, and we all look at it in a different way. Of course, the architecture is the beginning, and all of these houses were built and these apartments started from scratch. But that's not how I start decorating. I start decorating with the fabrics and the soft goods and the curtains and the upholstery and the carpets, because that's what gives the house the warmth. And then we build on the antiques and the furniture and the artwork, because that's really the soft goods are what you can access quickly and manufacture, and those you put into productions. It's very hard to find antiques and objects and even contemporary furniture. You wait so long for those things. The lead times on new things are crazy. And you know, there are no more antique stores. You have to really shop at auction. We used to travel and go to an antique store in every town. Now, you're lucky if you can even find an antique store in these cities in America. So depressing. But I'm really a fabric person and a color person, and that's how I start. And I always say to the client, what colors do you wear? What do you look good in? You want to look attractive in your house. You want it to be reflective of who you are. And I judge how they dress right away and what their sensibility is, so that I get an understanding of how they can look beautiful in their homes. Again, thank you, everybody, and I will be signing books outside.